As all who dabble in the arcane arts know, it's amazing how far you can go with just a little bit of magic.
And if arcane mastery isn't your calling, just remember that a small spell in the right place can make all the difference in the world.
We're talking about the Magic Initiate feat in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Greetings, Initiates. My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes.
Today we're taking a look at the Magic Initiate feat in D&D 5e.
We're going to start by breaking down the rules for the feat, talking about its requirements, and what you gain when your character takes it.
And since the feat grants you new spells, we're going to take a look at 6 of our favorite combinations that we've discovered.
Finally, we're going to look at a couple different role-playing ideas that can inspire any character that might want to take this really useful feat. As well, we're going to look at a few different ideas for dungeon masters who might want to look at new ways to use the feat in some interesting ways.
So, let's get rolling. Like all feats, you can choose this in place of an ability score improvement at the appropriate levels.
Magic Initiate is also an awesome pick for a variant human to take at first level. So let's dive in and look at the actual rules for the feat.
So first of all, you get to choose 2 cantrips from either the Bard, Cleric, Wizard, Sorcerer, or
Warlock and Druid.
Yeah.
You learn those 2 cantrips and can use them at will like any other cantrip. Second of all, you get to choose 1 first level spell from the same class. You can cast this spell once, and then you need to take a long rest before you can do so again.
And you are going to use the ability score granted by that class for the spells that you've chosen.
So this would be Wisdom for Cleric or Druid, it would be Charisma for Sorcerer, Bard, or Warlock, and Intelligence for Wizards. Because you have to use the ability score modifier associated with the class, this is a really important consideration when we're actually choosing what spells you'll want to get from Magic Initiate and what class you want to draw from based on the base class that you already have.
This also means that if you have that Ruthless Barbarian with the 8 intelligence and you choose the Magic Initiate feat and take wizard spells, that means that you're going to be using the -1 on your int to dictate your spell saving throws DC and your spell casting attack modifier.
For this reason, unless you're picking a class that lines up perfectly with your already good ability score modifier, you might want to really think about what sort of attack spells to take with your character, particularly first level spells, because they usually rely on being cast at high levels to scale up and stay relevant through the entire game.
Yeah, you want to be really careful when choosing your first level spell to maybe look at options that aren't going to become obsolete as you level up.
This is why we really recommend looking at spells that don't require an attack roll and don't require a saving throw at all. These are spells with some fantastic utility. So even if you don't get a damage-dealing cantrip or damage-dealing first-level spell or a control spell, you'll still find some really interesting options within each and every class. That said, if you do choose a damage-dealing cantrip, it does scale up. So if you pick something like Firebolt as your 8th level feat with Magic Initiate, then it will do 2d10 points of damage as normal. So damage-dealing cantrips can be a really tempting pick with Magic Initiate.
So also, you're going to want to choose spells that kind of speak to the character that you've created. It's a great way to kind of roleplay that inert abilities coming out of those secret powers that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, Magic Initiate is also a great way to shore up any weaknesses for your character or even double down on their strengths. As I said, it's amazing what some of these first level spells and cantrips can add to your character's capability, whether that's versatility, adaptability, or just more raw power.
Remember that you can also choose your own class if you're a spellcaster. So if you're a wizard and you take the Magic Initiate feat and choose 2 more cantrips and a first level spell, that's just more power for you to be able to cast.
Yeah, this actually makes it a great option to choose your own class, because when you do that, the first level spell that you get is added to your regular spells known. So you always have it prepared or known, and then you can cast it normally using your spell slots. This is because of the specific wording of the spell slots granted to you by the spellcasting feature, which says that you can use your spell slots to cast spells of your class that you know. This doesn't work if you are choosing a different class. For instance, if you're a bard and choose Magic Initiate Wizard, you can't use your bard spell slots to cast that first level spell.
So why don't we talk about some of our favorite combinations from each of the spellcasting classes?
Yeah.
So if you are going to take Magic Initiate and do the Bard Initiate, what are we looking at?
I think my favorite picks from the Bard Initiate would be Vicious Mockery, probably then another cantrip like Mage Hand or Prestidigitation or Minor Illusion, and Fairy Fire.
Fairy Fire is just such a key spell, and really anybody can benefit from being able to cast Fairy Fire. Helps the whole party out. And yeah, those two cantrips, Vicious Mockery, these spells really just kind of make you pretty mean in combat.
Pretty tricky, actually, with an excellent extra debuff and buff for your party, which makes it a really good option for a Warlock or a Sorcerer, because these are all, like, Vicious Mockery and Fairy Fire are not normally spells that those classes get. You can still use them with your Charisma, which actually makes even a Paladin an awesome choice for this. And also Vicious Mockery with the Paladin, kind of cool. Fairy Fire with the Paladin, pretty useful. Get advantage on your own melee attacks. Yeah. I also just like, it gives you that musical flavor to whatever class that you're playing, right?
Next up, we have the Magic Initiate Cleric, where my choices were Bless, Guidance, and Spare the Dying.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so good.
It makes you like Bless. I mean, if you ever have the option to take Bless, it's just one of my favorite spells.
It's so amazing because it's a bonus to saving throws and attack rolls. And with this combo, it doesn't matter if you have a bad wisdom score.
Yeah.
Right? So I could see taking this as a fighter or a monk, just a character that maybe just has a little bit more of a religious calling in their life, wants to say a blessing to their deity when the fight begins, and has a little bit of divine inspiration to give everybody, like just bringing guidance at will, that extra D4 on a skill check when you have a minute to say beforehand.
And then Spare the Dying just in case.
Yeah. And especially like with Bless, if you're not normally a spellcasting class, but to concentrate on it, because the classes that get Bless have so many other spells that they often want to be concentrating on. So if you're not a spellcaster, but you take this and cast Bless, you're bringing a huge boon to your party that normally would be very restricted. So I had a good combo for the Druid Magic Initiate, which would be Druidcraft, Shillelagh, and Goodberry.
Those are pretty awesome. The Goodberry I have found tactically useful in all exploration.
In a survival situation, it's a great boon. You only need to cast it once a day anyways.
Yeah, and Shillelagh, like if you're a monk and you have like a bow staff or something like that and you take Shillelagh, like you're just upping your damage.
Or even just take it with a cleric that wants a good melee attack, but just wants to hit with their wisdom modifier, right? I could also see dropping one of these for guidance, and as well, potentially taking Fairy Fire instead of Goodberry.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? Just to give those nods to those previous two that we mentioned, guidance is such an amazingly useful cantrip to get that extra bonus on skill checks when you're thinking ahead. So, and clerics and druids are two great options for picking it up.
So if we pick the Sorcerer and we do Magic Initiate Sorcerer, we're looking at Green Flame Blade, Firebolt, Shield, or Mage Armor.
What a good combo as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Really great for anybody who wants to add some kind of power to their attacks and stuff.
Yeah, like I could see the Green Flame Blade is such a useful spell, and there's a lot of different classes that can take it, but because it's based on a melee attack and it's just an extra punch of damage dice, you could add that to a fighter.
Yeah.
Throw Shield on there as well, right? And then take Mage Hand instead of Firebolt if you don't need the ranged attack, if you don't have a good Charisma score, right? Or taking it with a Paladin, because you can smite on your Green Flame Blade attack.
Yeah.
Right? Shield is great to save your life. And then Firebolt is going to give you an extra ranged attack to shore up. The Paladin is normally pretty tanky. Normally in melee, it doesn't have good ranged attacks. Gives you a good option.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of doing this with Mage Armor, because again, that's a spell that you only need to cast once a day anyways. Gives you a really good AC, better than what you get in Studded Leather. Mm-hmm. So great option for like a rogue or a bard, or even a bard, because they don't normally get Mage Armor either. And yeah. So if we're going to do a magic initiate with a warlock, there's kind of the best way to go is pick up Eldritch Blast, your favorite other cantrip like Mage Hand or maybe even Minor Illusion, and then Hex.
Yeah, the Eldritch Blast, I mean, is just such a powerful ranged attack to have at your disposal. Really, like, I even picture, like, a fighter who hasn't gotten into combat yet being able to, like, Eldritch Blast a few guys and then run in. It works with a whole bunch of different...
I would be tempted to take this with a sorcerer, with a bard, with a paladin, anyone that has that good charisma score to make a good Eldritch Blast hit.
Yeah.
But if you don't, it's probably good enough to take just another like non-damage dealing cantrip and just grab Hex. Because for that one battle where it matters, getting that extra d6 points of damage on all your attacks, pretty good with a paladin. Probably less so with the bard. I think with the bard, you're going to get the Eldritch Blast, and that's going to be your damage dealing ticket when your bard needs to actually make attacks.
Definitely.
So if we're going to do the wizard with our magic initiate, we could choose Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, and Find Familiar.
All very good.
I love this one because very few classes other than a wizard have a high intelligence score. It's like the dump stat of 5th edition.
Yeah.
But you don't need a good intelligence score for Minor Illusion, and there's so much creativity you can do with it.
Definitely.
You don't need a good intelligence score for Prestidigitation, and it's wonderful for role-playing.
Yeah.
And Find Familiar, again, it's a spell that you only need to cast like once a day, if that. And getting a familiar is so incredibly useful.
I've had people use their familiar for like infiltration, spying, like all sorts of different things.
I've had people use it aggressively in combat to generate advantage by having it take the help action.
Definitely. So I mean, like if you want a pet, this is the way to go.
It's actually a really great way. Like I think a lot of people want to roleplay a character that has like some sort of companion or a pet animal or anything like that, but they're not playing a wizard. Take Magic Initiate, and now you've got your pet cat.
Also, Prestidigitation is just like one of the most fun, like the amount of things that it can do just in role-playing aspects. It's just so much fun to kind of bust that out and just try some of the cool things that you can do with it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you could also take Mage Hand here, and you could take any of the other attack cantrips. I think they'll, again, because it's the wizard, you don't get the good synergy that the charisma-based casters have with Magic Initiate, right? So you really would have to be playing something like an Eldritch Knight or an Arcane Trickster, which would make it really good with a rogue, right? Like a rogue that has Mage Hand and Prestidigitation to clean up after themselves, steal things, grab things at a distance, and then they have their familiar as a lookout. So good. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the role-playing ideas with Magic Initiate. Like, where did your powers come from?
Yeah, so like Magic Initiate, you suddenly manifest these new cantrips that you can use really, really well, and a first level spell.
Yeah.
So I think that a popular way to roleplay this is that if you have another member in your party that's of the class that you're Magic Initiating from, why don't you roleplay being their student?
Yeah, like you've been traveling with this sorcerer for like a year now, and they've taught you a few things. So you can't cast all the cool spells they can, but you learned a few cantrips and one spell that helps you out.
Yeah, Magic Initiate in a lot of ways is kind of like multi-classing light.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a way to get just a touch of another class without actually committing to it. And so there's a lot of ways that you roleplay picking up another class that you can have with Magic Initiate. I also like the idea of like using Magic Initiate with a character that, especially a human that takes it at first level, and maybe your character is a rogue, but they failed out of wizard school, and that's why they have the Magic Initiate feat. Or you're playing a paladin that is trying to hide the sorceress powers that are manifesting in them.
Like they were born with these magic powers, but they're like, no, that's not me. But they still have a little bit of that.
Yeah, or the warlock, which actually could represent, maybe you've actually had a minor pact with one of the warlock entities, right? And that's why you've got these powers that have kind of been bestowed upon you as a boon or a manifestation of a curse.
Oh boy.
Right? And I think when we talked about the cleric and the druid, it's also a good way to call out your character's devotion, right? So if your character believes that nature is sacred. Well, the a magic initiate for druid could be a manifestation of their connection to nature. But if they're a magic initiate for a cleric, then it's a symbol of their relationship with a deity. And you might even want to choose spells from the cleric spell list that are thematic of that divine connection.
What about the idea for DMs? It's actually really cool to kind of think of this as maybe something to give out to a player as like a reward instead of treasure.
Yeah, I think this is a cool trick that you can use as a DM, because the Magic Initiate feat is a feat that feels like a magic item in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It gives your player a new power, but in a way that feels like a blessing or a boon, or maybe even the manifestation of a curse, right? So you as a DM could go through the spell list and choose the spells that are granted to the player, and they get this as a reward, right? So instead of them getting the feat for free, getting to choose everything, you say, well, actually, you've now sworn an oath to the Fiery Order, so you can cast Burning Hands and Firebolt, and those are the spells that you get from this. Or maybe, you're choosing all the healing spells, and they get Cure Wounds and Spare the Dying instead.
Yeah. They could also be like, you complete a quest for like a great wizard or sorcerer who then grants you like
teaches you a little trick.
Yeah, like thank you for completing this awesome quest. Here's some magic.
Yeah, and maybe they teach you like message or something like that. Or you could even expand it and say that maybe if an NPC teaches it to you, they give you a slightly higher level spell than what you would normally get from this, right? Like maybe a wizard teaches your character, like, here's how to cast the sending spell once per day if you need to call me for help.
Yeah.
Right? And then the extra boon of that is the player gets to choose the 2 cantrips they learn, but then they get the sending spell.
So this has been our guide to the Magic Initiate feat in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We hope that this brought a little bit more magic to your life.
Of course, there's a bewildering number of combinations that you can find with this feat, and we would love to hear your suggestions and ideas of spells that you would take with Magic Initiate in the comments below.
If you want to check out some of the other feats that you can choose, check out our video playlist over here.
And of course, the Magic Initiate feat does rely on the rules for spells and spellcasting, so you can check out our guide to those right over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.